For the latest top tips, reviews and advice, please subscribe below.
Hello and welcome to Attwoolls Outdoors with me, Mike. Today I'm giving you a review video on a brand new tent from Vango. So with me here today I have the Castlewood Air 800 XL and I also do a 400. So the Castlewood is kind of a new tent for the 23 season going forward, and it's basically almost based on its predecessor, the Longleat, but there's quite a number of updates they've really added to this just to really make it a slightly higher specification, but also I think from my personal point I think a bit more better value and probably more features on it that appeal to kind of the climate and where we're going, as well as an eco story. So we'll kind of go everything through that through this video. The first thing we'll start point is saying kind of the Castlewood is a vis-a-vis tent. Vis-a-vis refers to the fact that we have sleeping areas on either side with a main communal living section in between. Now the joys of this actually means that essentially you have obviously separate sleeping pods, so it generally feels a bit different and you have a bit more space away from yourself and the kids, so hopefully everyone kind of gets a little bit better night's sleep. The communal living area is not necessarily the biggest in comparison for this kind of concept, but it is for those people who want it. I see a lot of people with scout groups and things like that. It works well, so you get a lot of people in a small space, and you do have the option you can actually add on to the side of it if you wanted to. So you can buy kind of a side awning which basically throws guy ropes at the top, brings that material, and then that becomes predominantly will be kind of your main sort of cooking space, and it just means that you can also take away the tent and add on something bigger if the weather isn't quite nice and you want a bit more of an extra section, like a wet and dry area before you come into the tent itself. So what we've got is an inflatable structure, so it's air, so it's very quick and easy to pitch. I pitched the Castlewood on my own in the best part of, I'm pretty sure it's about 10 minutes, so it's perfect to go away for a shorter period of trip, so a weekend or even longer for a week. Generally the concept of it is quite easy. You just basically peg out the base and you pump up each beam individually. Personally I like to start in the middle and work my way out. And the joys of this really is that actually you get a manual hand pump supplied with it, like a stirrup pump, and it doesn't take an awful lot. And because you've got Vango's airspeed valve, it's quite nice that actually the hose part pushes and locks onto it like a bayonet fitting, so you haven't got any worry about it popping off halfway through. And generally on the actual gauge itself you get a live display, so you can make sure you get up to the recommended 7 psi. Generally as a concept it works really quite nicely, and air's been around for a number of years now and generally finds a little bit more sort of stronger in winds and a bit more kind of easier to pitch than its counterpart. So if you like the concept but don't necessarily like the price, you can look to go for the poled version. Everything I'm saying is basically exactly the same, just the structure itself is poled rather than air, and we've done a separate review video on that as well. So as mentioned previously, there's two models of this. They do the 800 where you have sort of 4-4 with a middle living area, or the 400 where you have a 2 and 2 and a middle living area. So later on in this video we'll show you kind of the 400 sort of size, just to get you a bit more of an idea about how it compares to the bigger 8 and what would work better for you. From the talking point of the actual fabric itself, so one of the big differences between its predecessor is this new material. So it's really nice, sort of like a Sentinel kind of material. So it's a strong, about 62 gram per square meter material. I'd say around about, if we compare it to the old terminology, looking about sort of 68D, 3000 ml waterproof rating. So again, a nice strong waterproof. But the main difference in comparison to the older fabric is the fact of how it's necessarily dyed its colour. Now this is kind of a really big thing that Vango have done for the 23 season going forward, because what you actually find, it actually has a higher resilience to UV. The reason how they've done this is in the dyeing process, rather than dyeing the material as a whole, they've actually dyed the sort of the thread itself and the yarn. So by doing this, what you find is actually the colour then goes all the way through it, rather than just basically with, when you dye the material, just on sort of the outside layer. Now this is important because obviously as a tent's life goes on and you have more sort of sunlight on it, essentially what you find is actually the outer coating sort of starts to deteriorate naturally because of the UV damage. Now the best sort of analogy I can use probably for this is the difference between, say, a carrot and a radish. Your carrot is basically your sort of thread dyed, and then the radish would be your material dyed. So as we open that outer layer or cut through it with a radish, you can see the white pure colour from the inside and that colouring sort of from the outside, whereas a carrot, you cut it, it's the same colour all the way through. So again, that's one of the bigger points, and the main of a big point is the fact that actually doing that new process with dyeing the thread, it actually saves about 60% of the water using for the sort of the cycle. So generally it's a more eco-friendly way of dyeing material. So generally, again, you get the both benefits of having a better colour retention, but also it's a more eco-friendly way of getting it the nice sharp mint green colour as it is. Other things to point out, obviously, is the two tunnel guide points. So we've got the really nice Vango orange material. So we've got actually where your sort of trip hazards is really going to be. And then obviously then you've got the normal kind of grey fabric which matches the sort of the tubes, and also the trim along the bottom. Windows located in kind of the main living area. So you've got the PVC window on one side with a low level ventilation point, and then you've also then got your entrance door. It's the same on the opposite side, but kind of flipped around. The door itself has multiple functions. So not only is it a door, but you can also create it to make a bit of a canopy. So by purchasing some additional king poles, what you can do is utilize the elastic pegging points on there to bring that out and make yourself a little canopy if you don't want to go to the full extent of kind of a side awning. And you can do that with both sides, so you almost buy two sets. The door itself as well also has a mesh panel built into it, so when you physically zip it down, you can actually also increase your ventilation by unzipping kind of your screen, and that then rolls down into, then you have a complete airflow directly into it. So it means you have a light on in the night, not have to worry about the bugs also coming in. Another thing they've actually played with is actually as well as how the door works and trying to get a better seal into the tent to stop the draft and the rain and water coming in. So this is basically designed that you've still got kind of a flexible lip that comes into the tent itself. So you can either have this lip that is sort of toggled up like it is here, just to give you a bit more of a, you know, stop the rain coming directly in. And actually what you find is you've also got not only toggles in the side, but you've got two eyelets in the middle and a Velcro patch that really does sort of connect the piece. Failing that, what you can then do is untoggle it and lay it flat, and if need be, peg it down as well. So it means then you haven't got a trip hazard in for kids, pushchairs, prams, or even wheelchairs into the main part of the actual tent itself. Not only have we got increased ventilation in sort of the side doors and beneath the windows, but at the ends, there's a really nice big ventilation panel up here as well, low level as well as high level, and a bit later on we'll kind of pan round to that in just a second. But I'll tell you what, let's kind of actually head inside the Castlewood and talk through a load more features that it does have to offer. So now we're inside, and you can hopefully appreciate a bit more of the overall size you got in here. You know, headroom height is not too bad actually. I'm about 6'2", stand up in the middle. Immediately when we get to the corners, that's not too bad actually. You know, when you think of things like furniture and stuff, you have it a bit lower anyway. You can push it directly to the sides. Generally, it feels quite light in here. It's just quite nice. It's quite a nice little place to be. And we've also got a darker material where the bedrooms are, just to kind of, again, cut out a bit more early morning light. So it's kind of their sort of nightfall bedrooms. Again, just designed to cut out a bit more light. Hopefully, me and you, everyone, especially the kids, don't wake up at the crack of dawn. You've got essentially a sort of like a 4-berth on one side and a 4-berth on the other. You've got a divider between them, so you can make it a 2 and a 2, or to remove the divider completely and have it as like an open 4-berth. That's why I think for me, generally with it being a 280 width, it is kind of definitely more of a compact 4. I see this more being as a very luxurious 2, or actually really a 3. Obviously you remove the divider or allow it to push out a little bit at the bottom. Now, they're actually the same width as the 400, it's only really the length that changes. So the length on the 400 is about 5 meters, whereas this is 7, so it's a little bit bigger all round. In the bedroom itself, we've got little storage pockets located down low, so it means you can still put things like phones and torches easily accessible at night, so when you need them, you know exactly where they are. Front door as well, located on the actual bedroom as well, can sort of zip it up quite nice and neatly. Another things to mention, the fact is you've got a little hanging point inside the bedroom for a lantern, as well as it's all colour coordinated to make sure that you know if you ever for any reason took the bedroom out, not that you really would, you know how to put it back in. On the front here we've also got a hanging point for a lantern that's featured across in front of the bedrooms and the main part of the living section. So again, you can have happily something regardless of where you want to have it. You've also got a little cable entry point located down on either side, so opposites from there, just so you have your mains hook up directly into the tent without having to worry about leaving the door open every single time. Other things to mention the fact as well, what you can almost do is almost run the cable directly around and now how it's that point. Personally, you can probably put behind the bedrooms just to kind of keep it all neat and tidy. Other things as well, we've got Vango's TBS system, stands for tension ban. It's basically an internal bracing design that's used on a high-end backpacking tents, but has a bit more sort of structure to the tent. So when you have wind coming from a particular side, basically it basically retains the shape of it as well. Something you would probably put in a lot of the time is something you just, when you leave tent antenna for a period of time, or you're going away off the campsite, pop them in, gives it a bit more stability, just because it's not really particularly a friendly place to be. We've got two main PVC windows in the actual tent itself, and then you've also got curtains to get the privacy when you wanted to. They're actually really quite a nice little pattern, so it's kind of like a what's the one I turn? Like not a mirage, but it's like a sort of illusion really. It was a beautiful kind of colour, and that mineral green looks really quite nice. You can either have them sort of toggled up halfway, or of course you can then also go fully up to the top if you want the ultimate privacy. They're elasticated, so again you've got a bit of give to them, and they're quite easy to use. And because actually they overlap with the window nicely, you do get, you know, a proper level of privacy from that point of view. A decent sized bag. Like I said, manual pump supplies with it as well, so it works really quite nicely. And the bag necessarily is oversized, so you should be able to get it back in the bag fairly simply. Let's actually bring the camera out and get a bit more up close and personal with some of these details. So we've got the bedroom, like I said, is a good sort of depth, about 2.10 m depth, so that sort of ticks the box from that point of view. Storage pockets, as previously mentioned, located on the side. It is a bit darker in here, as you can probably appreciate, and you've got some ventilation on the top and the sides. And there's a really nice big vent you can probably just about see through the backside there. The divider is just told, so it does give you a bit more of a privacy screen, but you can obviously remove that as and when you wanted to. But again, you've got the same sort of setup. So again, you've got your curtain with the privacy, and then that mesh window, which merely just kind of rolls up. And there's probably a good example of how it kind of toggles along the bottom to really get that seal from the sort of outside world. As we kind of come out, again, you kind of can see that kind of colour works really quite nicely. And then from the actual panel side of things, it's almost worth having a look at the ventilation points we got on the outside. So not only have we got those ones beneath the window, but as we look around here, there's a nice big vent panel. We've got a zip down on that side, but if we come around this side, what we've done is we've kind of, I wouldn't say gutted it out, but kind of created that ventilation point. So we've got airflow directly underneath it, but when the rain does come, it doesn't matter, because obviously it's just going to pull off there. Fair out, you can actually roll this whole vent directly up. So if you want it completely exposed on a warm day to get the maximum of air directly through, that works really nicely as well. And generally you've got the kind of the Vango logo, and it all sits really quite nice. I do quite like the colour tone of the touch and details of the kind of guide points. But what we'll do now, let's pop over to the 400 size and have a bit more of a look of what that's got to offer. So now we've got the 400 size, you can probably appreciate for straight away how different it is in terms of size. So it's a nice compact area. What surprises me actually is kind of the middle living section. It's actually probably a little bit bigger than you would think, and it's about the same size almost as the bedroom section. So it's a really nice even split. The bedrooms are kind of rotated sideways. So again, it still gives you that flexibility of actually having probably a more than generous 2-berth bedroom on either side. It's worth mentioning that this door is incorrect. It's going to be a complete door for the whole section rather than one down the middle. But you still got your key features down there, like your storage pockets, your rear ventilation points, high, low and wide, hanging points inside the bedroom as well as externally. And you've still got a whole big mesh panel on that backside as well, so with the ability to sort of zip it up and zip it down. Also, you can still make your canopy out of it by buying additional king poles. And also look how it sort of fits along the bottom. You've got a really, really nice seal directly in there as well. You haven't really got a cable entry point because you can still more than happily kind of got a little bit of room by the side door because you're straight into your main section. But from a bedroom point of view, it's really quite nice and dark directly in there as well. But I think, yeah, the 400 size are really quite, I wouldn't say cute, but it's sort of practical in the same way. You've still got the same kind of ventilation on the back, so not only can you get your low-level ventilation points, as we can see here, but you've got your high point as well. Still got your colour coordinated, because it's the Air version, but you've still got the same kind of sort of inflatable system that you would on the 400. Difference being is you've got one less tube to pop up, because there's only sort of 4 pole or beam placements rather than the 5 with the slightly sort of larger model. But I think generally it sits really nicely, and I think it's again it's something a bit different, and the new kind of colour tone of it I think again works really quite well. But let's pop back and have a final look at the 800XL. So back with the 800, you can probably appreciate, yeah, that the size, how it chops and changes one another. And I think it does very much depend on kind of what you want out of tent from a space or capacity point of view. So the 400 for me is probably a true 4, whereas I said previously the 800XL is more of a I'd say a comfy 6, or if you want a very generous 4, you know, that certainly works really quite nicely as well. And of course, as you've sort of previously seen, there is a poled version, so you can pick and choose your kind of structure to go along with your size. So it's right, nice and sort of flexibility there. There are additions, things like footprints and carpets that you can look at additionally, and of course the extensions, which you can more happily put on. I think you actually would fit in a side extension on the 400. It'd be about the same size as the tent, but you know, it would be a way to extend it more than happily. So that is definitely certainly an option. But for more questions, queries, and concerns, feel free to comment in the box below. It's always good to have feedback from yourself. And if you want any more information on things like pack sizes, floor dimensions, individual features, our pitching videos, you're welcome to check the link below this video. It'll take you straight through to our website. We have all the information on package prices to individual prices and all the bits and bobs that go with it, really. So yeah, plenty of information there at a touch of a button. But overall, I think the Castle was a really nice kind of next stage in this vis-a-vis kind of style. It's not vis-a-vis tents you don't see too often these days, so it's really nice to have that kind of option, especially kind of when it comes to Air as well, for that little bit more structure and a bit more quick and ease in putting up. But generally, I do quite like it. All the new tweaks and updates is quite a jump in comparison to where it was. And again, from a price point of view, I still think it is kind of in the ballpark of being, you know, sort of good value. But all in all, that's our video review on the Vango Castlewood Air 400 and the 800XL. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully we'll see you again soon in our next Attwoolls Outdoors video.